So this slideshow is all about government in Canada. So, we'll watch a video afterwards, which kind of summarizes some stuff as well, but we'll go through this. So again, just reviewing from that quiz, what kind of government do we have here? We have a
Democracy. Democratic.
parliamentary democracy, okay? What does that mean?
You get to vote.
Means you get to vote, and the people who are elected, where do they go?
They represent. They represent you.
Where do they go?
Parliament.
To a parliament building, right? So there's an institution. Are you done?
Constitution.
Are you done? Thank you. Okay, so we've already talked about these second and third ideas, so you don't necessarily need to write that down specifically. Take a jot note of the first point. So we are a federal state, which means we have a central government at the national level, the federal level. You could refer to it the same thing. Okay, that's the country. But we also have local governments. Okay. So yeah, as already mentioned, a parliamentary democracy is not just the ability to vote, but it's that the people we vote for, they go to our institutions and they represent our beliefs, they represent what we want, what we would like from our politicians, right? Ideally. And then constitutional monarchy, very straightforward. You have a constitution, so laws, rights are granted to all citizens, but you also have a monarchy, so you have a queen or a king that sits, at the top as a figurehead. Okay. We're gonna move on quick. Again, just focus on that first point. You don't need to take any notes on this slide. This is just emphasizing and showing you where all the provinces and territories are, if you didn't already know, where their boundaries are. But we have federal governments, provincial, territorial governments, municipal, and local governments, and then we also have First Nations governments. And not quite. I mean, we don't technically really have autonomous, sovereign First Nation governments, right? And we'll get into that in a moment, okay? So you might want to jot some of this stuff down. So there is only one federal government, okay? And this kind of comes back to what I was just saying about, we don't have indigenous groups that are able to really fully make their own autonomous decisions, let's say in making laws for their own people and dealing with criminal behavior, taxation, all that kind of stuff, not that I'm aware of. So our federal government deals with national matters, anything that affects the country, and international relationships, they deal with that. We call those people members of parliament, right? And they sit in the House of Commons, which is in Ottawa. It's a photo of that there. This number might have changed, but at some point there was 338 seats, which represent, people elected from around Canada. They represent the citizens of Canada, right? Their beliefs and whatnot. Okay. Government leader is known as the Prime Minister. Okay. You'll get a sheet later on. It'll have a lot of this information in it as well. So just write down stuff that you did not know. Looks like some of us are writing down everything. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Provincial and territorial government. So there's 13. Obviously, each province and territory has its own government. They have different names. Don't worry about the difference in names. For Alberta, we refer to the provincial government officials as members of Legislative Assembly. Okay. Does anyone know where the capital of Alberta is? Edmonton. Okay. So our provincial government sits in Edmonton. Their responsibilities for anything that occurs in the province. And we'll look at a chart later on which differentiates what is federal, provincial, and municipal government role. Okay, we call our leader at the provincial level a premier. Does anyone know the name of our current premier? Danielle Smith. Do you know the political party?
UCP.
UCP. Conservatives. Yeah. Yes.
Right after, can you go back to the last slide real quick?
What's up? What do you need on this slide?
That's it.
Okay, do you know how premiers and prime ministers are elected? The parliamentary part? Do you wanna?
Yeah, doesn't the group they're representing have to get a certain amount of votes?
Yeah, so in terms of the prime minister, you know, they need, I think they're called constituents, and kind of blanking on that, but you need enough votes in small areas around Canada. You need enough wins in those areas to win seats in the House of Commons. The political party with the most seats then takes the seat of prime minister, right? And premier is the same thing. So that person has to be the leader of the political party, and their political party has to win more seats than everyone else. Okay. And so this kind of breaks down that information. This is from the 2019 federal election. Okay, so the political party with the greatest number of elected representatives usually forms government, and their leader becomes the leader of the government. So I don't know why it says usually. I mean, I can't really think of other situations where, you know, obviously if the Conservatives had more seats than the Liberals in this situation, then the Conservatives form the government, right? Yes?
So for the local government, what is the name for it, like?
We'll get to the local stuff
Okay.
in a minute, okay? So it's important to note that, you know, you need, you know, from my understanding, you need half plus one, okay? Because if you just have 50% of the seats in the House of Commons, it's entirely possible that all the other government representatives vote against your bill, your motion, whatever it is you're trying to pass through the House of Commons, and your policies can get stopped, right? So you don't necessarily have a majority government. But if you have half plus one, you have more than 50% of the seats. If you want something done, your political party can get that through. It's very easy. Okay. So in a situation like this, where the Liberals have 157 and they needed 170 seats, how might they get laws through? What have they been doing for anyone following?
Convincing other parties?
Yeah, they usually need to form a coalition with another party. Does anyone know who the Liberals are in bed with frequently?
NDP.
The NDP party, yeah. Okay. Okay. So the sovereign refers to the figurehead at the top of a constitutional monarchy, king or queen, right? We have a lovely photo of King Charles here with his cool stuff. Some student in the morning class mentioned that this orb is something like 300 years old. I thought it looked like a potion, but I guess it's a big jewel or something. I don't know exactly what it is. So you have the sovereign all the way at the top, that's the king or queen, and then they have representatives in a constitutional monarchy. At the federal level, that person's known as a governor general. At the provincial level, they're known as a lieutenant general, okay, or lieutenant governor. Okay, you're gonna wanna write those down because your worksheet later asks a question about that. Okay, and so then there is no municipal, there is no representative of the queen or king, the monarch, at the municipal level. Any guesses as to why that might be? So how many representatives do we have in total here if we count all the provinces and the federal representative? Right, so how many federal governments do we have in Canada? One. How many provincial governments? It was 13. So there's 14 people in total. But how many cities are there in Edmonton where you might have a mayor? Or sorry, how many cities in Canada where you might have a mayor? Lots, right? All of them, right? So it wouldn't make sense to have another 4,000 people representing the king or queen, okay? So mostly you just want to write down the sovereign is the queen or king, their representative at the federal level is the governor general, provincial level, lieutenant governor. Okay. You good to move on, or do we still need? Okay. Okay, so there is more information in your next handout about the role of the Governor General, so don't feel the need to write down this middle part. Okay, I'm gonna move on. We got a couple more slides left here. So answering your question with the municipal governments, so there's something like 3,700 municipal governments in Canada. Okay, and so those are cities, small towns, whatever it is. they're represented by a mayor or reeve. Not really heard that word. Okay, they don't have a sovereign representative, so cities don't have a representative for their monarch. Okay, so people who are voted into the municipal governments, they're known as councillors. A friend of mine actually plans on running for a councillor in Edmonton for the year 2025. So another friend of mine ran in the last election, just for the hell of it. Yes.
So for provincial government, it's called premier, and what's the name?
For the sovereign representative,
No, for the provincial, like there's the leader.
member of legislative assembly, I think it was.
Okay.
MLA. Yeah.
Of legislative,
Assembly.
sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. So with First Nations in this country, due to the history of how colonization occurred and imperialism, stuff you learn about more in this course, grade 10 and a bit in grade 12, you know, Indigenous groups have been trying to fight for their right for self-government. You know, they don't necessarily want to follow under the same, let's say, laws and organization of Canada, right? They want to be able to dictate things on their own. They want sovereignty. How that might happen. So, have any of you ever had to share a bedroom with a sibling or something?